used to drive the back roads after my late shifts at the printing plant. Something about those quiet, empty highways at 2 or 3 a.m. made me feel calm. The world felt frozen, no traffic, no noise, just the hum of my old Honda and the soft flicker of the dashboard lights. One night in late October, after a double shift, I started my usual 30-minute drive home. The air was cold and a thin moon hung low. For the first 15 minutes, nothing unusual happened. Just me, the dark road, and a song playing low on the radio. Then my headlights caught a figure standing at the edge of the trees. He wasn't moving, just facing the road. I slowed down, thinking maybe someone's car had broken down. But there were no hazard lights, no car, nothing but that man standing perfectly still. I rolled my window halfway down, about to ask if he needed help. But he didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there. A strange cold filled the car, the kind that feels wrong, like it comes from inside you. I told myself it was nothing and drove off, but my stomach stayed tight. A mile later, I looked in my mirror and saw him again. Same figure, walking along the road behind me. I hadn't seen another car the entire time, and there was no way he could have gotten that far so quickly. I brushed it off. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe there were two different people. But the unease stayed. I pressed the gas a little harder. The road curved through thick trees, no houses or lights. Then, I caught something reflective in the rearview mirror. Two faint glimmers, like eyes catching light. I blinked and looked again. Gone. I laughed nervously to myself, told myself I was overtired. Then the radio cut out mid-song, replaced by static. I reached to adjust the dial, and in that same second, my headlights revealed him again. This time, standing directly in the middle of the road, I hit the brakes hard. My heart hammered as my car screeched to a stop, maybe 50 feet from him. He didn't move, didn't flinch from the blinding light. Just stood there. I sat frozen, gripping the wheel. Finally, I pressed the horn, one long honk. No reaction. I shifted into reverse, but when I looked back, my phone screen was black. The battery had died, even though it had been charging. My car engine sputtered, lights dimmed. I told myself not to panic. I shifted into drive, floored the gas, and swerved around him. As I passed, I couldn't help glancing sideways. What I saw didn't make sense. His face was pale, stretched tight like paper, his eyes sunken, and his mouth curled in a strange, too wide smile that didn't move with the rest of his face. I drove faster than I ever had, watching the mirror the whole time. Nothing. Just darkness swallowing the road behind me. About 10 minutes later, I reached a small 24-hour market. The parking lot was empty, except for an old van. I pulled in, shaking. My headlights lit up the edge of the lot, and there he was again, standing near the trees. The same stillness, the same twisted smile. He slowly raised his arm and waved. The movement was wrong, almost mechanical. I wanted to scream. I didn't move until I convinced myself it couldn't be real. Maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion. Finally, I tore out of the lot, tires spitting gravel. The highway never felt so long. I tried calling my dad for comfort, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a shaky message I later deleted. For a few miles, I saw nothing but the empty stretch of asphalt. Then I passed under an overpass and saw him again, standing perfectly still under the yellow light, facing my car as I sped by. I felt cold all over. The GPS rerouted because of road construction. The detour sign pointed me onto a smaller road, darker than the one before. I followed it reluctantly, hoping it would reconnect soon. Then, headlights appeared behind me, a pickup truck. I relaxed a little, grateful not to be alone, but the truck flashed its high beams twice. Once, twice, like a warning. I looked back, and the road behind me was empty again. My throat went dry. The truck was gone. My mind told me I was imagining things, but my gut said otherwise. I pressed harder on the gas, wanting to reach the next town. The forest thinned, and I passed a small cemetery. As my headlights washed over the gravestones, my breath caught. There, standing beside the fence, was the man. Closer this time, almost leaning forward as if he was watching me go. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, and jumped out, ready to confront him, to prove he was flesh and blood. The night air was icy and wet. I looked around. No one. Not a single sound but the ticking of my cooling engine. Then, from above me, came 3 distinct taps on the car roof. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Slowly, I looked up. Perched on the cemetery wall was the same figure. He was thin, impossibly thin, and his clothes looked old, soaked in shadow. He smiled at me again, revealing teeth that looked filed down. When he spoke, his voice sounded dry, like wind through dead leaves. "You shouldn't be out here alone." I stumbled back, ankle twisting on the wet ground. Pain shot up my leg, but I didn't dare look away. "Who are you?" I tried to yell, but it came out a whisper. He tilted his head, and the smile didn't move. "You gave me a ride." The words froze me. I didn't understand what he meant. I backed toward my car. The headlights flickered on by themselves, and the radio exploded with static again. I didn't think. I jumped inside, slammed the door, and sped off. The road blurred under the tires. I didn't stop until I saw the faint orange glow of the highway lights near town. My ankle throbbed, my head buzzed, but I kept driving until I reached my apartment building. When I finally parked, I sat for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard. I told myself it was over. I locked my apartment door and left the hallway light on all night. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my neighbor knocked on my door. She was an older woman, always up early walking her dog. "Hey," she said, frowning. "Was that your car out on the street last night?" "Your headlights were on. I thought you'd had an accident." My stomach dropped. "What time?" I asked. "Around 3. Down the block." She shrugged. "They went off a few minutes later." I mumbled thanks and closed the door, heart pounding. My car was parked right outside, exactly where I'd left it. No damage, no mud, no scratches. I opened the door and searched the car inside and out. Nothing unusual, except for one thing. In the seat back pocket behind the passenger seat, there was a small, folded piece of paper. My name was written on the front in shaky handwriting. I unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside, 3 words were written in old, faded ink. "Thanks for the ride." I dropped it like it burned me. I stood there in my driveway, sunlight finally breaking over the roofs, and realized I didn't have an explanation for any of it. Later that week, I told a friend from that county about what I saw. His face went pale. "Man," he said quietly, "you saw the walker." I asked what he meant. He told me about an old legend. Some man who used to walk those back roads decades ago. No one knew who he was, but people said they'd see him standing by the trees, hitchhiking, or just watching. Sometimes drivers would stop. Some said he'd vanish when they looked away. Others said they'd see him again miles down the road, always closer than before. I laughed it off, tried to convince myself it was just a story, but the details matched too closely: the pale skin, the stillness, the smile. I haven't driven that route since. I take the lit highway every time now. Even then, sometimes when I glance at the shoulder of the road, I think I see someone standing there in the dark, just out of the reach of my headlights, waiting. Every time, I tell myself it's nothing. But when I close my eyes at night, I still see that smile and hear that whisper. "You gave me a ride." It was late, past midnight, when I finally clocked out of my shift at the hospital. I'd been working extra hours all week, and the drive home was the only quiet time I ever got. My route was simple: a 2-lane highway that cut through open farmland, then a winding stretch of forest before it reached the outskirts of town. I'd taken that road hundreds of times, day and night, but that night felt different. The fog rolled in thicker than usual, so thick that my high beams only lit up a wall of gray. I remember checking the clock, 12:47 a.m., and thinking if I just stayed awake a little longer, I'd be in bed by 1. I didn't know that by the end of that drive, I'd never take that road again. The first strange thing happened near the old service station that had been shut down for years. The gas pumps were still there, rusting away, and the sign creaked whenever the wind hit it. As I passed, I saw a single light flicker inside. Just a quick flash, like someone striking a match. I slowed down instinctively. I knew that place hadn't had power for years. Then, through the fog, I saw someone standing by the pumps. A woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing what looked like a dark blue jacket. She was facing the road, unmoving. I figured she might have broken down, so I pulled over and rolled down my window. "You okay, ma'am?" I called out. No response. She didn't even turn her head. I was about to step out when I noticed her face. Pale. Too pale. And the way her hands hung at her sides, stiff and wrong, like she wasn't alive. I froze, and in that silence, I realized there were no sounds. Not the wind, not crickets, nothing. Just the faint ticking of my engine. I put the car in drive and eased forward. As I did, the woman slowly turned her head toward me. Her eyes caught my headlights, and for a second, I could swear they reflected like animal eyes. I floored it. I didn't look back. A mile down the road, I convinced myself it was exhaustion, a trick of the fog and light. I kept going, humming to fill the silence. Then I saw headlights in my mirror. A car behind me, far back but gaining. Relief flooded me at first. Another driver meant I wasn't alone out there. But as the lights drew closer, something felt off. They were too bright, too high, like a truck's lights. But the shape behind them was wrong. It didn't look like a car, more like two floating orbs keeping perfect distance. I tapped the brakes and the lights dimmed, matching my speed. Every time I slowed, they slowed. Every time I sped up, they matched. I drove for nearly 10 minutes like that, trying not to stare at the mirror, until the lights vanished completely, gone in an instant. I let out a shaky laugh, thinking maybe they'd turned off at a side road, but when I looked forward again, there were two faint white dots shining ahead of me in the fog. Same height, same brightness, as if the vehicle had somehow gotten in front of me. My heart dropped. I slowed down, hands gripping the wheel, staring at those lights until I realized something chilling. They weren't headlights. They were eyes. A shape began to emerge from the fog. It was tall, too tall to be human, and it moved in a slow, jerking way, like every step was being learned for the first time. I swerved into the other lane and flew past it, not daring to look directly at it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw its head turn toward me, and its mouth opened in a wide, unnatural grin, the kind that stretches far past what skin should allow. I kept driving until my chest hurt, whispering to myself to stay calm, to stay awake. When I reached the bridge near Hollow Creek, I finally started to believe I was safe. The fog had thinned, and I could see the glow of the town ahead. But then I noticed something smeared on my windshield, a long handprint, wet. I turned on the wipers, but it didn't go away. It wasn't on the outside, it was inside the glass. I pulled over on the bridge, heart slamming in my chest, and jumped out. My breath turned white in the cold air. The road was dead silent. I walked around to the passenger side, opened the door, and saw that the inside of the windshield was dry, except for that single dripping handprint. 5 long fingers trailing down the glass, ending where the dashboard began. I wiped it away with my sleeve, but my hand came away cold and damp, like I'd touched condensation from a freezer. I shut the door, got back in, and pressed the gas. That's when I heard it. A faint sound behind me. Breathing. Someone exhaling slow and heavy. I froze. My rearview mirror showed nothing but the back seat and shadows. I turned around. Empty. I reached for the light switch overhead, and the breathing stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse than the sound. Then, from somewhere outside the car, right next to my ear, came a whisper, "Keep driving." My blood turned to ice. I didn't question it. I hit the gas and sped across the bridge, not daring to look anywhere but straight ahead. When I finally made it into town, I pulled into a diner parking lot and jumped out again, trembling. The world was normal again. Traffic lights, distant cars, the hum of a late-night radio station. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I'd fallen half asleep at the wheel. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, catching my breath when a waitress came out the door, smoking a cigarette. She glanced at me and smiled. "Rough night?" she asked. I nodded, forcing a laugh. She blew smoke into the cold air. "You come from the East Road?" I said, "Yeah, the back highway." Her face changed immediately. "You shouldn't take that road this late," she said softly. "Not after what happened." I frowned. "What happened?" She looked over my shoulder as if making sure no one else was listening. "Couple months ago, a woman ran out of gas near the old service station. They found her car still running the next morning, doors open, headlights on. But she was gone." I felt my stomach drop. "They ever find her?" She shook her head. "Only thing they found was a handprint inside the windshield." I couldn't speak. She stubbed out her cigarette, gave me a pitying smile, and went back inside. I sat there until the sky started to lighten, too afraid to move. When I finally drove home, I avoided that route completely. But that's not where it ended. The next morning, when I got into my car for work, something caught my eye. On the passenger window, drawn in faint streaks of moisture, were 5 long fingerprints, pointing inward, like something had been watching from outside. I wiped them away and told myself it was leftover fog. But that night, when I parked at the hospital, they were back, fresh. Every time I drove after dark, they'd reappear. And sometimes, when I stop at a light, I swear I can see a reflection in the glass beside me. A pale woman in a dark jacket, smiling, waiting. I don't take that highway anymore. I don't even drive at night if I can help it. Because every time I do, I can feel her near watching, breathing, waiting for me to slow down again. It was around 1:30 in the morning when I decided to head back home after finishing a late shift at the restaurant where I worked weekends. I lived about 30 minutes away, mostly through empty highways and long stretches of country road. I'd done that drive dozens of times, but that night, something about it felt different. The air felt heavier, quieter than usual, like the whole world was holding its breath. My name's Eric, and I still can't explain what I saw that night on my drive home. I took the same route as always, Highway 22 north, then a right onto Brookvale Road. That stretch was always my least favorite. No street lights, no houses, just thick woods pressing against both sides of the road. On a moonless night like that one, it felt like driving through a tunnel of black. I remember rolling the window down halfway, just to stay alert. The cold air bit at my face, and the low hum of the tires against the asphalt was the only sound. I had the radio on low, some talk show that faded in and out of static the further I drove. About 10 minutes down Brookvale, I saw something ahead in the distance, what looked like a car parked on the side of the road, hazard lights flashing. I slowed down instinctively, debating whether to stop. Normally, I'd call highway patrol if someone was stranded that late, but as I got closer, something about the car made me uneasy. It was an older model sedan, maybe early 2000s, but all the doors were wide open. The headlights were off, engine silent, but those red hazards kept blinking in the dark like a warning. I pulled over about 30 feet behind it, keeping my high beams on. "Hello?" I called out through the window. No response. I stepped out slowly, shining my phone's flashlight toward the car. The first thing I noticed was the driver's door. There were long scratches on the metal, deep ones, like something had clawed it. Then I saw the inside. The front seats were soaked with some kind of liquid, dark, sticky. My stomach turned as I realized it was blood. I froze. The air suddenly felt thick, like the silence itself was pressing down on me. That's when I heard something, a faint sound, like sobbing. It was coming from the woods to the right. I turned my flashlight that way, but the beam barely reached past the tree line. "Hello? Are you okay?" I called out. The sobbing stopped, then a voice answered, but it didn't sound right. It was shaky, almost like someone struggling to mimic a human voice. Help me. My heart started pounding. It sounded close, too close. Against all common sense, I stepped toward the edge of the woods. The smell hit me first, metallic and rotten. My light caught on something hanging low between the trees. At first, I thought it was a tarp. Then I saw hair, long, dark hair matted with blood. A woman was hanging upside down from a branch, her body limp, arms dangling just above the ground. Her eyes were open, glassy, staring right at me. I stumbled backward, gasping, my phone slipping from my hand. It landed face up in the dirt, flashlight still on. And in that narrow beam of light, I saw something moving behind her. It wasn't human. Its shape was wrong. Too tall, too thin, with arms that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. It leaned forward slowly, its face, or what I think was its face, peering out from behind the hanging body. It had hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and then it smiled. I bolted from my car, heart hammering in my chest. I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and hit the gas without even looking back. As I sped down the road, I glanced in the rearview mirror once, and froze. The hazard lights from the abandoned car were still flashing in the distance, but now, behind my car, I could see movement. Something was running after me. I pressed the pedal to the floor, engine roaring, but no matter how fast I went, I could still see it, just far enough to make out its silhouette, those long arms almost brushing the ground as it ran. The faster I went, the closer it seemed to get. I remember screaming out loud, slamming on the horn, anything to drown out the sound of my own panic. Then, everything went black. I woke up to bright headlights shining in my face. I was pulled over on the side of the road, car still running, hazard lights blinking. My phone was dead. It was 4:13 a.m. I had no memory of the last 2 hours. I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, that I had fallen asleep at the wheel. But when I got out of the car, I noticed something that still haunts me. Deep scratch marks ran across the driver's side door, 5 of them, perfectly spaced, carved into the metal like claws. The next morning, I went back with a friend during daylight. The old sedan was gone, not even tire tracks, but a few feet into the woods, we found something hanging from a low branch. A single piece of torn fabric, stained dark red. It looked like part of a dress. I filed a report, but the cop said no car matching that description had been found or reported missing. They chalked it up to exhaustion and stress. But I know what I saw. Every time I drive that road now, I see those faint scratch marks on my door, and I feel that same pressure in my chest. Like something's still out there, waiting for me to come back. And some nights, when I check my rearview mirror, I swear I see 2 faint red lights blinking in the distance, just barely visible through the dark.